Now, I want to jump ahead in this process and say the time where I first discovered an ability to measure and what the effect of that would be of brainwave states was about 2 years into the program. Mel Riley and I were selected to go to the Office of Congressional Inquiry or Investigation. There's a building in DC that is everybody in there. What they do is research, testing, exploration of things that people want to bring to Congress or to congressmen, right? And this particular guy, his name was Dr. Julian Gresser. And he was a guy that introduced this concept of thought incubation, which I now teach. Thought incubation was an alternative to brainstorming, and that's what he was bringing in. I don't know if you ever had to experience this, but when I came into the Army, organizational effectiveness was a part of that transition out of the 70s, right? So they sent guys off to officers and NCOs to become OE certified. That became their secondary specialty. So what these people, this was so frustrating because they would bring, assemble the battalion officers, right? And then all the NCOs would go over to the NCO, and you'd have the officer, this captain up in front, being the facilitator of this organizational effective sensing session. Like, okay, what's going on that's wrong in the battalion? Yeah. Do anything like that?
Oh yeah, no, I took it next. I took it next level. So we were having. I shouldn't tell this story. It's pretty. I don't know, manipulative is the right term, but there, what our troop was like. I was the XO, and our troop was having a lot of, was griping a lot, right? So they wanted to do a sensing session. So I said, the first sergeant did. So I just told the commander, the first sergeant, I'm like, look, we can do that, but let's time it so that we do it on like a Thursday, because we were going to win I think the company was going to win the Tiger Jack Award that afternoon. So let's get all this stuff out, and then we win the Tiger Jack Award, like problem solved. And that's what we did, and it worked. It worked perfectly. Like there were no issues after that, right?
Because I can tell you that the sensing sessions suck, and there was nothing good that ever came out of them. But
right.
They do them, and I can tell you this too: that the problem with brainstorming sessions like that end up with well, first they go through the sensing session, right? What's screwed up? What's not screwed up? What do we do well? We'll put stuff down. What do we do? What do we do really poorly? What do we do sort of okay? All that stuff would be up on, butcher paper pinned up on the wall.
Now for AARs, that stuff's like gold. It's great. But for cold, like sensing sessions. But go ahead. I didn't even do
it. Effectiveness, because they would happen quarterly. And the idea was that this was the way you built high performing units as opposed to reactive units. That was the theory behind it. And it came out of much of the development and exploration of just human performance factors, right? And understanding of what makes people tick, because that was Delta Force concept paper. I mean, the think tank, it was, came out of Shannon's First Earth Battalion, all these other things, which was, how do we figure out how people really are operating here? What makes better soldiers and better units and better leaders, et cetera? Well, those organizational effectiveness things were really ineffective, because they are brainstorming sessions that have a disproportionate sprinkling of power in there. The battalion commander is not going to acquiesce to something some second lieutenant comes up with and throws up on the board as, here's how we improve your command, right? And introverts, which there are those in the Army as well as anywhere else, find that in an environment where extroverts are fighting and competing to get their crap up on the board, right, to be considered, extroverts throw something out and they get shot down, and theirs never makes it up on the butcher paper, or it gets lined out very quickly afterwards. So introverts then do what introverts do, which is shrink back and say, okay, business as usual. Nobody really cares, right? They're all the extroverts are going to decide. And so all the extroverts flurry and scramble to get all their crap up on the board. And guess what? The battalion commander decides what's going to be done and what's not going to be done. And then it's all over and everybody walks away going, well, that was very frustrating. It didn't really reveal anything except people are pissed off. And that, as it always is, the guy that's in charge wearing the oak leaf is the guy that's going to decide what we're going to do. So
yeah, I mean, what it is it's like a griping session, and it allows the only really beneficial thing it does is it allows people to gripe and to vent, and that's about it. Right. Yeah. Now, if you're a good commander, you'll take the advice and feedback and use it. But, a lot of people are not good commanders.
I saw you ever did, even though they were trying to play the role, right? They were trying to play the role of that. I saw guys like who went on to be a general. I saw that of Emery Mace, who went on to be a general. I saw that of Wes Taylor, who went on to be a general and led, the attack on Grenada. I saw that, and I even saw it in General Lure, who I respect above and beyond any of the officers I ever served with. I saw him be willing to accept certain levels of criticism and unwilling to accept others, and affect change in minor ways based on that input, because he really wanted to be a team player with that. But my bottom line with that is that was how we were doing things. And so here comes Julian Gresser, right? Dr. Julian Gresser, JD. And he comes in with this thing, and he's trying to get Congress to bite on that is it's called thought incubation as an alternative to brainstorming. And what he did was he put Mel Riley sitting right to my right. There was a daisy chain cable that came around to each of us, and off this daisy chain cable came this big thick cable out. There would be these outputs, and the outputs had a galvanic skin response thing. There was an output that came to two sensor probes that you had to put this abrading gel on and conductive gel. One went just above the occipital protuberance on the hat rack on the back of your head, and one went to the right temporal lobe, and you had this big band around your head. And then the wire came down and went into the big cable. And you also had a wire coming out to the jack that you could plug in a headphone, and you put the headphones on like you are, and you had a screen in front of you. Now, what would happen is there would be a decision about he would toss out about 10 questions. And he'd say, okay, we're going to thought incubate, one of these questions. But he would also point out to people that he had trick questions in there. So people would say, well, let's do that one because it sounded juicy, right? And he would say, okay, let's pull this one out. He goes, now, is this one question or 5 questions? People would be like, what? Is it 1 question or 5 questions? So people everybody's looking, well, I can see 3, I can see 2, 1, no, it's 1. The other one's like, no, it's 5. And so Gresser would then turn around and go, it can easily be 5 questions. And he'd show you why one question contained actually 5 questions. And his teaching point there was garbage in, garbage out. If you go in with some nebulous, broad brush question, you're going to come out with a bunch of nebulous, broad brush information. So the thought incubate something, you have to be capable of distilling the question down to a definite right question. And we did that. We learned that. It was fun. It was something I'd never explored before, but it was amazing, and I've never forgotten it since. So we'd have one question, 10 people, and the whole idea was, as you are with your headset on and you're watching, you had to go to a theta brainwave state to be able to, in a place where you are devoid of judgment, unaware of your environment, devoid of self-doubt, self-analysis. The theta brainwave state was where the door of the three-dimensional perception theoretically is closed. So with the headset on, you get the guy with the big computer over there, which at this time was pretty amazing if they could do this. This guy starts the program, and each person is being monitored separately on his big monitor, right? Or a series of monitors. And the program that was developed is mapping individual brainwave states. So as you close your eyes and as you try to relax, as you go into your self-hypnosis thing, what happens is when you go from gamma to gamma's got one tone, and there's I can't remember the exact color of the screen, let's say red. And when you drop from gamma to beta, the screen changes to like orange, and you get a different tonal feedback in your head, right? You could change the volume on it, right, to as low or high as you wanted it, and then
so your senses are getting feedback and letting you know what each brainwave state feels like
for you, right? This is critical to understanding this, because if you're sitting in front of some yogi in a lotus position telling you what a theta brainwave state feels like, that is like a copy of a copy of a copy, because you're accepting that what he's saying is how you should feel. So your focus is on trying to make yourself feel like he felt or as he described it. And that does not put you in a theta wave brain state or theta brainwave state. And he's telling you what somebody else told him. You follow me? So it just ends up being an interpretation on top of an interpretation on top of interpretation for as long as it goes. So the only way you will ever know what kind of brainwave state you're in is this thing Julian Gresser did. And we sat there and you could feel your body. And as the tone went from beta down to alpha, you could feel the physiology in your body change. But if you focused on it too much, it would go back up into gamma, right? Back up into beta, and you get a tone change and a screen color change again. And you got to the point where your eyes were closed, but you could sort of see the screen change, through your eyelids. It's like just the light changing, and then you're hearing the tone. So now you're like, you just let go, go deeper, let go, and then you'd feel yourself go from beta back to alpha again. And if you heard somebody cough, you'd go back up in beta again, then descend back down into alpha, and then ultimately into data. And in data, it's called thought incubation. So you don't have to be consciously aware of the question. Why? Because you already know what the question was. It's logged into your biological brain already. Mm-hmm. Saw it on the board. You spoke it out loud, right? If you want to, objectify it right in front of your face, which was, as I recall, part of the exercise. But now you're descending into these brainwave states, and you're getting feedback as you're going. So you're locking into your brain, right into your physiology, what it really means to go to that brainwave state. Your body itself is memorizing that. It's putting that into, its cellular memory, into its muscle memory, into its respiratory memory, circulatory memory, right? Everything is saying, oh, okay, this is what this is. That is the most powerful experience, I will tell you, that I had ever had in that realm, because doing that for a week, when I came out of there, I looked at Mel and I said, we got to carry this back to the unit. I mean, we need to have an EEG machine, because after this was all over, each session, they would give you a map, a printout for each person that said, here's how long you were in gamma. Here's when you dropped into, because it was an hour exercise. How long you went from gamma, when you dropped to beta, how long you stayed in beta. Did you go back up to gamma? If so, how long? When you dropped to alpha, how long you stayed in alpha? Did you go back up to beta, back down again? How many minutes you were in each place, right? Up, down, up, down. And your first few were horrible. I mean, you couldn't stay in the brainwave state you were targeting. You kept porpoising, was the term, back up into another higher brainwave state. Sometimes up through 2 thresholds. So you'd get to theta, but you become consciously aware of it and you rocket right back up through alpha and into beta again. Sometimes piercing into gamma again. And so it was such an education, right? An education for me to see that. So now when we teach, right, we use a like on the book you bought, there's a link on there that you can download the MP3 of that. And I will tell you how that was audio engineered. It was audio engineered using a hemisync mix that we knew would get you to an alpha brainwave state for a coordinate remote viewing audio. We also embed, that's the binaural beat that's there, called hemisync by Robert Monroe and others down the chain of investigation and research of that all the way back into the 1800s, right? And then you have also pink noise in there, not white noise, but pink noise, because it's at a frequency that helps you lose your awareness of external ambient noises that might show up, like a dog barking or something else. That's why that's there. And then there is a yogic relaxation breath meditation, sort of a guided process to take you through. Now, does it work? Well, after we audio engineered it in Longmont, Colorado, with a friend of mine who was an audio engineer, we tested it. We ended up getting an EEG machine from one of his physician friends, and we brought it over. We're told how to hook it up and do it. And I think he actually had a tech that was there working with us. And out of 10 people, 9 of them, if they weren't, in other words, you had to have people that weren't listening to it for the first time, because if you're listening to it for the first time, you're actually analyzing it. So we gave them copies of the CD in those days, or CD, or it was CD, and gave them copies of the CDs and said, listen to this every night or every chance you get, not while driving, but anytime you can get into a relaxed state, listen to this at least 10 times. So if they're listening to it 10 times, what starts to happen is they stop consciously listening to it, right? They stop analyzing the words. It's already inculcated, as Tony Robbins would say, in their head, right? Inculcated. And so then we tested them, and 9 out of 10 went straight into an alpha brainwave state. The other went to a shallow beta, deep beta. And I guess if they had longer, they probably could have pierced the threshold and gone into alpha. So that's why those audio programs are now used. Because, and if somebody really wants to get to that place with it, there are unfortunately no brainwave trainers that I know of that do these things. It needs to map individual brainwaves. They don't need to interpret them into relaxed, or aware, relaxed, and sleepy. That's just stupid. I mean, people don't need that. It needs to say you're in gamma, beta, alpha, theta, delta. It needs to be able to map that. And it needs to map it over time, right? So you know where you were in each one of these and when you were there. And it should give you some sort of feedback. It should give you tonal feedback or visual feedback. Tonal's most important. Visual, if you're staring at an iPhone screen, it's probably going to be difficult to get to a theta brainwave state. So it would be much better to have it as tonal, I think. I'm certain of it. But if you could do that, you could really train people to get to these different brainwave states, which that's the goal of transcendental meditation. That's the goal of meditations of all sorts. That's the goal of hypnosis, relaxation, whatever the case might be. I just think that would be an extraordinarily powerful tool to be able to know where you were. And you have to do that in order to know for yourself what it feels like really to be in that brainwave state. So
there's nothing off the shelf today that does that you're aware of?
Nothing that I'm aware of except EEG machines, and those for 3,000 and cheap ones.
All right. We'll see everybody again in the next episode. Thanks again, David.
Bye, everybody.
If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like, subscribe, and notification buttons. Additionally, if you have any feedback, please put something in the comments below. And lastly, if you want to watch the full episode of this clip, you can find it above. Thanks again for watching.